right from the start here, let me just play through the song so that you can hear what it sounds like and see what it looks like with these chord shapes. And then from there, I'll get into some more of the specifics about how to actually make these chord shapes and how to pick it. Okay, so the first thing about this song is its tuning. It's in drop D tuning, and I think that a lot of people, we all know what drop D tuning is, but just so that we're on the same page, it's whenever this lowest E string gets dropped down to a D. Alright, but the key of the song itself is actually in the key of E. So what he does is he capos on the 2nd fret, and then plays in standard D-shaped chords that we would all be familiar with. If you watch live YouTubes of Jason Isbell playing this song, you'll see quite clearly that he's using a pick. But on the album version, it sounds to me like he's just finger picking it, so I'm going to do this being finger picked as well. And in order to achieve the rhythm that he has on the album, it relies a lot on interplay between your thumb plucking down and your first finger, which will usually be plucking back up. And this is the rhythm that you're going for. Notice how I'm plucking down with my thumb on the lowest D string. That's basically, I'm just hitting on that lowest D string with my thumb over and over again. And then I'm picking back up with my first finger there. I'm using my other fingers to just kind of flick down. I use my fingernails there to just kind of flick down and rake down these strings to provide extra rhythm. And sometimes my first finger is raking with them to get that driving sound that the song has. And we probably don't think of this song as really being driving. It's not really in your face, but there's definitely a steady, very reliable rhythm that sticks in this song the whole time. And that's because of what your fingers are doing while you pick it. Another note to be made about this style right here and what Jason Isbell's doing, there's not a whole lot of right or wrong that's happening in your right hand right there. It's just you create a rhythm and you stick to it. But what is really important is you have got to be on your game up here on your left hand. As long as you've got the correct notes fretted, you can have a lot of latitude with your right hand in which notes you're deciding to pick or emphasize or whatever, as long as you're staying within the boundaries of the rhythm that you're making. You have got to be on top of things with your left hand in making your chords, otherwise the whole thing will fall apart. So how do you make these chord shapes? The first one is just a standard D. Okay? You can look up how to make a D on the internet if you don't already know how, but it's just a standard D. Occasionally, he will leave his middle finger up and just not fret it at all. Sometimes that's to let the E string down here ring. Sometimes he frets it. Plays it differently depending on just, I guess, whatever he wants to do, but a D. The second one, we'll call it a G chord. It's not technically a G, but it's taking the role of a G in this progression based on the chord shapes that we're playing. You would fret the lowest string, which is tuned down to a D, on the 7th fret. I fret it sometimes with my ring finger. I fret it sometimes with my pinky finger. And it really doesn't matter which you fret it with. It's just which is most comfortable to you based on what chord you're coming out of. But you would fret the 7th fret with something, And then you would fret the B string 5th fret with something. Sometimes I fret it with my pointer finger, sometimes I fret it with my middle finger. It just depends on what chord I'm coming out of, and for you, what is the most comfortable. But you're really just fretting two things, and you're wanting for that note to ring out, your D string, your G string, and your B string to be ringing out. Not really too concerned with that high E. I've just kind of got it muted by how I'm laying my hand. So D, G. The minor chord in the song, there are two minor chords. There's something that it's technically C sharp minor, but it's filling the place of a B minor, so we'll call it a B minor. The way that I play that is I've got something on the B string 5th fret. Usually my ring finger will stay there, and then I'll fret the B note, which is actually a C sharp, but the A string 4th fret that with your pointer, and you would let ring the A string that's fretted, the G string that's not fretted, the B string that is fretted. Those are the ones that are mainly going to be receiving attention in this chord. You'll generally let the B just kind of be muted. The A chord that exists in this song, sometimes, again, your ring finger is generally on the B string, on the 5th fret, and you will fret the D string with your pointer finger on the 4th fret, and sometimes what you're letting ring is the A, the D, and the B string, which is fretted. Sometimes you bar it into an A. Sometimes you maybe let the G string ring out. And there's no real specificity on when to do this. It seems like Jason Isbell just does it at random, depending on just whatever he's feeling at the moment. So there's no real sticking point on how to make that A. There are a couple ways to do it. The E minor chord that is in this song, which is actually a G sharp minor, you would, again, your ring finger or something, sometimes maybe your pinky, but something would need to be fretting the B string 5th fret, and then you would fret the lowest string on the 4th fret with your pointer finger, and that's going to be your minor note, your E minor note. In ringing, you would let the lowest string ring, you would let the D string ring, you would let the G string ring, and you would let this B string ring. And if you came down to the highest E string, it would be fine for that to ring as well. You generally wouldn't want for your A to be making noise. Sometimes if you wanted to, you could actually fret that A string on the 2nd fret right there if you wanted to. If you just wanted to kind of press down both strings, that would be fine as well. There's a couple ways to do it. Alright, so those are the general chords. One of the most interesting things about Isbell's playing style, I think, is the way that he approaches hammer-ons and pull-offs, many of which are executed over this D chord right here in the song, that rely a lot on interplay between this G string right here either being hammered onto with your pointer finger or being pulled off of to let the string ring again. And he generally does this in an area of the song that resolves back up to the D. Like the D is always home base in this song. Starts on D and ends on D. But usually whenever he comes back around to the D is whenever he'll take liberties with hammer-ons or pull-offs or whatever. One of the ways that he does this is like... So notice the hammer-on there after coming back from the G. The hammer-on is... hammer from the G string to that 4th fret, which we're treating the 4th fret like the 2nd fret, I guess, because we're capoed. But hammer on to the 4th fret from the G with your pointer finger, and then you hit this B string that you fretted on the 5th fret with your ring finger there. Or at least I've used my ring finger. People do different frettings or different fingers for different frets, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But that's one way to execute this. So from the D down to this G, back up to the D, you hit that hammer on. Another way that he executes a hammer-on this D chord here is basically just lingering and allowing the G to be open for more beats depending on the time of the song. So the first hammer-on was just, but sometimes he goes, and that's just something that you'll have to play around with to try to get right. So one hammer-on is, I mean, they're all open G to that fret right there, which is really the 4th fret. That's one, or it's there are a lot of different ways to do this, and it's something that you just play around with and train your hand to keep in rhythm and allow your first finger to come off and go back on just at your own discretion within the boundaries of that rhythm. And you can create that really kind of lazy feel that Isbell gets with his pull-ons and pull-offs, either going, you know, or Alright, the next thing that I want to address about this song, and something that in watching YouTubes of covers and lessons for Speed Trap Town, I've never really seen anybody directly address this, and that is the correct way to move from the minor chord in the song, which is technically a C sharp minor, but it's kind of taking the role of a B minor chord, considering that we're pretending that we're playing in D. But anyway, the way that you transition from the minor chord in this song into the A. The way that our brain wants us to play it, and the way that I've seen a lot of people playing it, is to play that walk down straight, like you would play the D into the G, back up to the D, and then play the walk down straight like this. But it's not a straight walk down. That transition from the minor note into that major, you know, A chord that we're making there, it moves on an uptick. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and I don't even know what beat that would be. It's maybe an and or an I don't know, but it's not a straight 1, 2, 3, 4 beat. You're hitting B, A, G, D, B, A, G, D. And the way that he plays it, I'll run through from the D to the G, back up to the D, and then hit that minor chord. And you'll notice that as I walk down, I'll hit the fretted C sharp minor note that we're saying is a B. And then you would pluck the A by A string, D string, G string. And I go thumb, first, second fingers is how I do it. Thumb, first, second. But so. B, A, G, D, B, A, G, D, B, A, G, D. So that's something that you would need to deliberately practice, because it's a bit of a funky rhythm, and especially if you're trying to play and sing at the same time, it's a lot easier to sing over it if you just play it straight and go. Because again, that's what our brain tells us to do, but that is not what Isbell is doing at all. He's hitting that B, and then on an uptick, hitting the A chord, which we're actually playing as an open A, open D, and open G, down into the G chord, back up to the D. Let's try to tackle this chorus real quick. It starts on our E minor chord and moves to the G chord, but it walks there, meaning that you've got to find a way to sneak that note in, your low D string 6th fret, between your E note and your G note. I usually move it with my pinky finger, and I'll go. But you could move it with your ring finger if you wanted to, and go. it doesn't really matter which, but what does matter is that you've got something up here ready to go on this B string 5th fret once you get to this G to fill out the G chord that you've got to play on top of it. So here's what it would sound like put together. D, A, and this time it just holds on the D, back to E minor, so you get the idea there. Alright, so it had gotten kind of dark in here. I turned a light on. Last thing to cover is the bridge, and I didn't include the bridge chords at the very beginning whenever I was showing chords because they're mostly all the same with the exception to a C chord, which your ring finger is still going to be staying planted on the B string 5th fret, and you would fret the A string on the 5th fret with your middle finger to make this C sound. You would walk down to the B minor chord that we talked about earlier, and then it would resolve to the D. Those are the chords to it. The thing about it though is that one measure is in 3, one measure is in 4, and here's the way that I count it. I'm not sure if this is correct, but you'll notice that it matches up. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is the bridge. I lied. There's one more thing that I'm going to add, and that is a couple of other embellishments that I hear in the chorus. One centers around the A chord and whether or not you allow this high E to ring out. Sometimes he lets it ring out, sometimes he does not. On this A chord, to not let it ring out, you would sound like... To let it ring out would sound like this. Alright, another embellishment would center around the D chord and suspending it the way that he suspended sometimes, or the way that he will sometimes suspend it, is by placing your pinky finger on the high E string 5th fret and then picking it up and picking the open E string and then picking the B string fretted on the 5th fret. That would sound like this. So there are different ways that you can play around with that as well, including just at your own discretion, your styles of hammer-ons and pull-offs that you do just as you play around with it or as you see fit. Alright.